Hello everybody, and welcome back to Cask and Point. Today we are trying a rye that has one of the most interesting backstories of any whiskey I've ever heard of. This is Rittenhouse's 23-year-old rye. So this was released in approximately 2007 by the Heaven Hill Distillery. That sentence alone should raise a lot of red flags. Number one, 2007 didn't have that much 23-year-old whiskey. Frankly, we're not seeing much 23-year-old whiskey today. And in the rye category, there's very, very few. I mean, we have Michter's 25 rye, we have a handful of Willet-sourced rye barrels that got that old, but 23-year-old rye is just incredibly rare. So that's odd. The fact that it was released around 2007 is especially odd because it means it was distilled in the early 1980s, and it's a legendary distillery, it's Heaven Hill. So what happened? Well, let's break it down a little bit. As the story goes, around 1984, a very special client approached Heaven Hill, and he requested that they make him specially crafted rye whiskey barrels for just him. And he said that he wanted to age them for a while and then he'd come back and purchase them later on. Well, it turns out that Heaven Hill actually agreed to this and totally did it because it was 1984 and there wasn't really a huge whiskey market at the time. In the 1970s, vodka overtook bourbon as the most popular spirit in America. In the 1980s, whiskey was really struggling. And actually, around this time is when we see a lot of new distillations. So we see the BTAC collection, they start distilling in the early 1980s. We see Elijah Craig starting to distill in the late 1970s. We see Blanton's distilling in the late 1970s. So at this time, whiskey is really trying a new project of making really nice whiskey to try to bring people back. And ultimately, in the 90s, they start releasing Pappies. In the 2000s, they start releasing the BTACs. And in the 2010s, well, we all saw what happened, and now bourbon is what it is today. But in 1984, they agreed to make these special barrels for this client because they said, yeah, you know what, why not? Why don't we distill some barrels? We'll leave them for a while. This is what you want. And it turned out that in the mid-2000s, when they were chasing him down to actually buy the barrels, he never did. He never came back. He never bought barrels, which are now worth thousands of dollars per bottle. And so Heaven Hill just went and released it themselves. And so they have a Rittenhouse 21 year that was released in 2006, give or take. We have a Rittenhouse 23 year and a Rittenhouse 25 year. Today we're trying the 23 year right in the middle of the pack here. And I've heard reviews saying that some people really prefer the 21, some prefer the 23. Not many tend to prefer the 25. They think it's really oaky. But this is fun, this is funky. It's 100 proof, so it was watered down. Probably not very much because just given the age and given all the history, it probably wasn't super high at cask strength. And I would say the thing it's most similar to are there's some Willet 25 year ryes that are exactly 100 proof. They're like 1776, 1777, 89, like those barrels, which I actually do have a sample of one of those, and one day we'll try it, probably pretty soon. But this is funky. I mean, there isn't 23-year-old rye on the market even today at 100 proof, and the fact that it's Heaven Hill distillate, and the fact that this was distilled in 1984, I mean, man, it's so interesting that not that many people talk about this release, and it could just be because, you know what, it isn't that great. But we're going to find out here today. This is about $2,000 to $2,500 on the secondary market. It is pretty volatile, so some weeks you may find it cheaper to $2,000, some weeks you could definitely see it closer to $2,500. And the 21, 23, 25, there isn't a huge discernible difference between the secondary prices on those, and that could just be because the quality isn't super different between them. But I got the 23 first, so that's what we're going to try here today. And man, we're going to find out if this special client in 1984 really made a mistake by not picking up these barrels. I mean, that's just so interesting. The fact that they agreed to do it in the first place, and then the fact that they ultimately didn't end up picking it up. And then after all that, Heaven Hill went and actually made a special release and called it Rittenhouse Rye and released them. So super funky here. There are not many bottles of Rittenhouse Rye out there, but today we're going to be trying one of them. So let's get right into it here. Wow. On the nose, you get a bunch of dusty funk. 1984 distilled. Now, as you guys know, I've really been going down the dusty path recently. We've tried some 1990s Blantons. We've tried some 1980s Louis XIII. We've been trying a lot of pre-2000 whiskey. It's usually my cutoff for dusty. I usually like to say if it was released in the 1990s, it's probably a dusty because it was probably distilled in the 1980s. That gets pretty close to a dusty. And honestly, Michter's 20 and Michter's 25 here, my fun fact is that I think that they are dusties because they were distilled in the late 1990s, and so they're kind of dusties. But yeah, 1984, released, yeah, probably around 2007. So yeah, that's just super interesting here. I mean, rye candy galore on this one. When I say rye candy, I typically mean like there's a coconut to it, there's a sugar cane to it, like a real nice sugar cane sweetness. I mean, there's a lot of dusty funk on that one. There's a lot of oak on that one. Definitely some good baking spice as well, your cinnamon and nutmeg. Not super fruity. I'm getting more of like a honey on it, but I'm not really getting a ton of fruit. I mean, it's hard to say that this smells like Heaven Hill because, I mean, obviously this is pre-fire Heaven Hill, and I've talked a little bit about pre-fire on the channel. We actually have a really cool bottle of pre-fire here. This is an Anderson Club 15-year bourbon. This is 86 proof, and this goes for maybe about $350 on the secondary market. That's a 1991. So 1976 distilled, actually older than this Rittenhouse Rye, and, you know, we'll try that in review sometime soon. But that's actually my only Heaven Hill Dusty, so don't have a ton of experience with the Heaven Hill pre-fires. I have a lot of experience with the greatest Heaven Hill post-fires, the Elijah Craig. And if you're not too familiar with the fire that I'm referring to, 1996 in November, Heaven Hill had a fire. And everyone says that the juice just tastes a little bit different before then. So anything distilled before November 1996, that's considered pre-fire. This is 1984, obviously pre-fire. Okay, let's take a sip. Wow. That's dusty funk. It's light. It's light. It actually does really drink that 100 proof. Definitely not punching on all cylinders here. It's very oaky. Definitely getting a little bit of that vanilla custard that I typically get off Dusties. It's funny, I just remember we also just tried the Wild Turkey Dusties, the 1990s Wild Turkeys. And man, we're really going down the Dusty rabbit hole quickly. I guess when you try all the best whiskey of today, you kind of have to look to the past to get some really funky whiskey. It's funny because this, I've never really thought about this as a Dusty, but I guess since it's distilled in 1984, even though it's released, you know, mid-2000, 2007-ish, kind of has to be a Dusty. Wow, so super sweet here. Getting almost like a green apple candy on this one as well. Tons of caramel sweetness on this one. Dusty funk, rye candy, and it's oaky. Okay, that's really interesting. Is it worth $2,000? No. If that's what you were looking for, it's not. It's a cool thing to try once, but it's fun. So I'm actually planning to do a really, really fun greatest rye whiskeys of all time flight. I'm going to throw in Booker's Rye. I'm going to throw in my favorite Boss Hog Rye. Really like Black Prince here, but we actually are going to do a Boss Hog flight soon and really see if that's the best one. And so many other amazing things. If you have recommendations for what to put in, definitely let me know down below in the comments. I want to throw in a Wild Turkey Xmas Rye from the 1990s. Dusty, modern, I don't care. I want to discover what the true greatest rye whiskey of all time ever was. And I will be honest, on this here, I don't know if this one deserves a place. It's really good, and it's really dusty and funky, and I like that I'm getting that kind of dusty funk on 100 proof. I typically get it off of 80 or 90 proof because dusties tend to be lower proof. But I'm not absolutely blown away on that first sip. Let's take a second sip here. It's really good. It's hot and oaky. And that could be because, I mean, if you break it down here, the really special releases with these kinds of stats are going to be insanely specially selected barrels, in a way that this actually might not be. Because the thing is, these were made for a special client and kind of just left for the special client. And so if there were really only like, let's say 10 barrels in all of these 3 releases, it kind of does make sense that, you know, you don't really have anything specially selected, and some of those are just going to get really over oaked. And I'll be honest, we've tried a lot of really great aged whiskey on this channel, and I have never really said anything's over oaked. And a lot of people like to say, you know, 18 years are over oaked, a lot of 20 years are over oaked. A lot of people say there's 25 bourbon is over oaked. I disagree with all of that. I think those are incredibly well selected, very fine barrels. This is over oaked. This one to me, if this one is over oaked, I imagine the 25 is super over oaked, and I could see why some people may really prefer the 21 year. And that is oak. That is too much oak. It gets tannic towards the mid and late palate on there. Kind of really distracts away from that sweetness. Not really what you want to see out of a whiskey. Was this cool to try once? 100%. If you could find this at a bar to try for like 75 bucks an ounce, around what secondary, you know, that's like $2,000 a bottle, sure, do it once. But I don't know how many bars are offering this one, so yeah, I don't know. But this one is interesting. Not absolutely loving it. I do think it's over oaked, which is not something I typically describe whiskeys as. But you know what? Sometimes when you try 23-year-old whiskey that's not super specially selected and it just has a really funky story behind it, And honestly, odds are the reason why we're looking at insane secondary value is because there just aren't that many of them. I mean, this was released almost 20 years ago at this point, and it's a 23-year-old product. I mean, this thing was distilled 41 years ago. But man, wish it was a little less oaked. Let's take our final sip here. Let's give it a rating. Super oaky. Super oaky. There's a honey in there. There's a ton of tobacco. I mean, like real serious tobacco on that one. A little bit of like resin on that one as well, which is nice. Huh. Yeah, it's deeper. It's very rich, but it's not super potent. I think the finish here is just pure tobacco, pure leather and tobacco, which honestly, if that's what you like and that's what you're looking for out of your whiskeys, which I know some people are, I think you'll find a lot more to enjoy out of that one. I really like my fruit. I really like my sweetness. This actually doesn't have that much sweetness on. I think on the first sip, it was very sweet. I think it got very oaky and very tobacco forward very quickly. And I think that's okay. Not super for me. I mean, to be clear, I'm looking at this through the lens of my expectations, right? My expectations for this were incredibly high. I was thinking this might be one of the greatest whiskeys I've ever had, and it's not. That Stillweller 17-year, very old St. Nick that we tried a few weeks ago, that was one of the best whiskeys I've ever had. And that's just how it's going to be. I mean, look, we're trying really expensive things, and some of those are going to be super expensive because they are truly incredible. Some of them will be super expensive because they're super rare, they're super limited, and honestly, so few people are actually trying these things today that people just kind of safely assume that, yeah, Rittenhouse 23-year-old rye, it's distilled in 1984 and it's Heaven Hill juice. Obviously, that just sounds absolutely insane, but it turns out that, no, it's actually really over-oaked, and while I still really respect it as an overall spirit, I don't think it's worth more than a couple $100. I'm going to go ahead and rate that. Oh man, I'm going to say it's an 8.4. I hope that's not super sacrilegious for a lot of people, but yeah, it's good. It's $200-300 good for $75 an ounce to try it once because it's so unique. Sure, if you have the money to spend. But no, this one is actually surprisingly disappointing, which is unfortunate. I mean, Black Prince takes this and just kills. I mean, that Whistle Pig, Boss Hog, oh my god. It's good. But the dusty funk and all that is honestly really overtaken by that much oak, leather, tobacco that are coming out towards the mid and late palate there. The finish is long and it's just tobacco. And, you know, if you want to have tobacco, smoke a cigar. But look, some people really like that on their whiskey. I don't mind it, but I like some sweetness. I like stuff to balance it out. This is just tobacco for me. I think 8.4 is pretty fair on this. I'm not going to say it was bad, because it wasn't bad. It was actually still very solid. I mean, 8.4 is still a very respectable rating, but it's not $2,000 good. You know, try it once. This is not a buy for me. But anyways, I hope you all had fun. I mean, this is just such an interesting bottle. I'm really happy we got to try it here. This is one of those few things that I've always said, you know, I really love to try that one day. And I got to try it, and I got to share it with you guys. So win-win. If you guys had fun, I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll catch you all in the next one.